good evening and welcome to Primetime News here on TV1. You're joining me, David Paldano. Now, before we head into your stories in more detail, let's first take a look at your headlines this evening.
The 2022 budget amendment to Parliament. VAT increased, retirement age lowered, and selected families to get 10,000 rupees assistance. 20% shareholding in state banks to the depositors and staff. Mixed reactions towards 2022 budget amendment. IUSF takes to the streets against suppression, met with tear gas and water cannon. Carpenter arrested for setting Ranil's private residence on fire. Man who stole liquor bottle remanded. IMF delegates meet opposition leader. Indictments filed against Johnston. Petition against Sanat Nishanta to court.
And now taking a look at one of the headline-making stories. Sri Lanka's President and Finance Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe presented the amendment to the 2022 budget in Parliament today, and it includes tax hikes as well as relief for the people facing various difficulties. Here is a look at the key points from the 2022 budget amendment. The Sri Lankan Parliament met at 1 p.m. today under the auspices of Speaker Mahinda Yapa Abewardena, and after the standing orders were suspended, the 2022 budget amendment was presented.
From the time the government nationalized businesses, most of the tax revenue of our country has been spent to cover their losses. Funds which have to be utilized for the necessities of the community are being wasted on keeping these companies afloat. I wish to quote a recent statement made by Sunil Handunnetti of the JVP. Quote, "The government should make policies. The government does not have a role to engage in commercial ventures," unquote. If we can nourish our minds with creative thoughts according to the current trends of the modern world, then we can solve the economic crisis. This interim budget speech, the IMF agreement and the budget 2023 will set the framework for economic stabilization and revival. Within it, we will set the roadmap.
President Ranil Wickremesinghe, in his capacity as the Finance Minister, presenting the 2022 budget amendment, proposed for an increase in state revenue, limit state expenses and social welfare. Here's a list of relief measures announced via the 2022 budget amendment. 61,000 food insecure families which need urgent assistance will be provided 10,000 rupees per family for a period of further 4 months. Assistance of 5,000 rupees per month temporarily to families in the waiting list for Samudhi benefits. Additional monthly allowance of 2,500 rupees for pregnant mothers in addition to 20,000 rupees already provided to them. Cultivation loans of farmers with 2 hectares or less to be written off, but this excludes the interest. Utilizing unemployed youth for the productive use of the existing government lands in the areas of agriculture and livestock. Establish youth agriculture companies with funding of 250 million rupees. 50% import duty concession is offered on import of advanced new technology and equipment or accessories for food packaging. Encourage the manufacturing of electric bicycles as a local industry and tax concessions for imported accessories or parts required in the manufacture of electric bicycles. Fuel subsidy for the fisher folk and the families with no electricity.
Given the weak government revenue and the lack of net foreign financing of the budget, it is inevitable that a limited level of monetary financing would continue until tax policy measures help improve the government cash flow and the IMF program unlocks foreign financing for the budget.
The 2022 budget amendment also saw proposals for increasing state revenue and limiting expenses. VAT will be increased to 15% from the current rate of 12% with effect from the 1st of September this year. Revenue proposals introduced in May this year will be effective from the 1st of October. Compulsory tax registration for all residents who are above 18 years of age without considering their annual income and tax-free thresholds. 22 selected Pradesha Sabhas to be merged with a municipal council or an urban council adjacent to them. reduce the retirement age to public sector and semi-government employees to 60 years.
Those who have been employed beyond 60 years of age at present in the government and semi-government sectors will be retired as of 31st of December 2022.
Purchase of fossil fuel-based vehicles for public sector will be suspended. Establish a state-owned enterprise restructuring unit.
Sri Lankan Airlines CPC are making significant losses. It is proposed to establish the state-owned enterprise restructuring unit to facilitate restructuring of government-owned business entities. I propose to reactivate the statement of corporate intent process for key 50 SOEs as they are under different efforts to restructure to closely monitor the set targets.
Statement of corporate intent නැවත සක්‍රිය කිරීමට මා යෝජනා කරනවා.
Allotment of 20% shareholding in state banks to the depositors and staff of those banks. Use private sector investment for the development of the railway transport service using the existing infrastructure under this program. Committee to supervise the disposal of scrap materials accumulated in public sector institutions. Establishment of a national debt management agency. Establishment of national agency for public-private partnership. Introduce required laws to establish a system like Inspector General in the USA, tasked with making sure government expenditure system is working well and in the way it is intended.
I reiterate the invitation to all the parties represented in this parliament to join an all-party government, since this unprecedented situation is the responsibility of us all and therefore need to prioritize the necessities of the country and the nation. Some parties say that they will not join an all-party government due to action by the government, which they cannot condone. Others express a reluctance to join due to their opposition to the policies. In this instance, I wish to emphasize that I am not the person who decides the actions or policies of an all-party government. It is not an administration of a single person or a single party and will be established according to the consent of all stakeholders of the government. Therefore, I reiterate that if there are policies or practices which you do not condone, then you have the right and mandate to change them within an all-party government. Therefore, I request all of you in this house and all the citizens of the country to put aside your personal political goals and unite in the context of the national cause of rebuilding the country and the nation. I would like to remind you the line of the lyrics Ajitapara Lalila, written by Bandara Ahaliyagoda for a teledrama produced for the Mahapula Scholarship Fund. So, let's get together for the country without spinning in one place anymore. Let's create a knowledgeable society with a strong economy that can run forward together with the world.
Here is a summary of the 2022 budget amendment. Total revenue and grants 2,094 billion rupees. Total expenditure 4,427 billion rupees. Budget deficit 2,333 billion rupees. It is proposed to secure 342 billion rupees as total foreign financing and 1,991 billion rupees as total domestic financing.
The 2022 interim budget proposals are to be debated in Parliament starting from tomorrow until Friday. These are some of the remarks expressed by parliamentarians on the proposal after the parliamentary sitting today.
We will provide relief to people who are severely affected. This budget mainly comprises of policy measures that we need in order to manage the country's economy.
වික්‍රමසිංහ මාස 6කට ඉස්සෙල්ලා ගත්ත තීරණ දැන් වෙනස් කරනවා. ඉස්සෙල්ලාම හිතන්නේ එතකොට මාස 6කට ඉස්සෙල්ලා මේ ගත්ත තීරණ වලට එකඟ වෙච්ච අය මේවට පක්ෂද කියලා. වෙනදා අයවැයක් ඉදිරිපත් කරනකොට පොළොස් සම්බන්ධ නිකන් එනවනේ එහෙම එකක් ඒකෙදි අපි දකින්නේ. ඒ ප්‍රතිචාරය තුලින්ම දකින්නේ මේ ආණ්ඩුවේ අස්ථාව.
If we need to reverse a decision, we should do it. As a party, we had to do certain sacrifices, and we are ever ready to make those sacrifices if needed in the name of our people. It only highlights the fact that the budget proposal presented by Basil Rajapaksha last year has created great damage. This does not provide relief to the people. It does not address the woes of the people.
කවුරු බලය ගත්තත් වෙනස් දේවල් කරන්න පුළුවන් කමක් නැවත අමාරුම තත්ත්වයක්. අපි දන්නවා ආර්ථිකය අමාරුයි, ආදායම අඩුයි. මේ සියරම වැඩි කරගන්න අලුත්ම ගමනක් යන්න වෙනවා. සල්ලි මුදල් අච්චු ගන්න එක සීමා කරන්න ඕන තමයි. නමුත් ඒ වෙනුවට කරන්නේ මිනිස්සුන්ගේ ඇඟට බදුවර එකතු කිරීම නම් ඒක ඊට වඩා අපරාධයක්. ඉතින් මේ indirect taxes
Imposing indirect taxes is similar to slashing the other forms of relief. When you look at the defense expenditure, there is no difference. This is a short-term interim budget, 4 months, and its main focus is to restore the country from this crisis. The President himself drafted this budget proposal. Abiding to his speech, the President has placed the policy measures that we need to implement in order to restore the country back to her former glory by 2024.
We don't see any direct taxes being increased. Only that the indirect taxes are getting increased, which means it is regressive and the poor people are going to get hammered. We expected Ranil Wickremesinghe to walk his talk and to really take money from those people who he has been for the longest time accusing of dodging taxes, including certain members, I think, who are going to become ministers in his cabinet. He hasn't done that, and we are disappointed with it because we expected him to do that. So VAT he increased from 12 to 15. He didn't mention the additional VAT-like tax of 5%. The indirect tax that people will have to pay immediately will go up in another few weeks from 12% to 20%. Soon people are going to see the repercussions of these increases. The people who are going to be taxed should have been better targeted rather than the indirect tax that is going to be hammered on the middle class and the poor, and they are the people who are going to suffer the most.
If you look at it monetarily, this is an empty budget. There were many ideas, including those that were highlighted during our government. The people said the country is in an abyss because of the leaders that committed theft, fraud and corruption. This budget only referred to the introduction of a new legislation to further strengthen the bribery commission. That act was prepared in 2019 and there is nothing new to it. The Inter-University Students' Federation protested in Colombo today, only to be met by tear gas and water cannons from the police. 25 people were arrested for taking part in the protest. The Inter-University Students' Federation gathered outside the Elphinstone Theatre in Maradana today evening to protest against the arrests made via the Prevention of Terrorism Act. The protest march was organized by civil activists as well. However, Sri Lankan police informed them that a protest march cannot go ahead as it did not have any prior approval. The IUSF then commenced its protest march, while Sri Lankan police, the Special Task Force and the riot police had obstructed their path from the technical junction in Colombo. The protesters then attempted to reroute their protest march to Lipton Circus via Maradana, and steps were taken to disperse them from opposite the Health Ministry premises. Health workers protested against the arrest of several protesters and several of them were also arrested.
The Sri Lanka police visited the Centre for Society and Religion in Maradana today evening when the Inter-University Students' Federation and several other factions were engaged in a media briefing. Police officers noted that they need to speak to Lahiru Weerasekara, the national organizer of the Youth for Change movement. Following a heated exchange, the police officers left the premises.
පොලිසිය නීති ක්‍රියාත්මක කරන අපුරට මහ බැංකුව වංචාව සම්බන්ධගත ක්‍රියාමාර්ග කියන්න.
The police had left as Lahiru Weerasekara was not present at the location.
Going in for a short commercial break. Stay tuned for more of the very latest.
පුරා ගලන මේ සතුට සුරක්ෂිත කරන්නේ Islam Insight. Islam ජීවයයි ජලයයි ජීවිතේ.
Miss, you are next.
Your letter still hasn't come in, no? I really want to help you, so let's fulfill each other's needs. Come here alone after 5. If you come, so will the letter.
Sexual bribery is a crime. Your rights have no conditions. Call 1954 to report any instances of sexual bribery to the Commission to investigate allegations of bribery or corruption.
Welcome back to the news. A man who stole foreign liquor bottle from Ranil Wickremesinghe's private residence was remanded today.
A man who was arrested for entering the private residence of President Ranil Wickremesinghe and stealing a foreign liquor bottle was remanded to the 7th of September by Fort Magistrate Thilinagamage today. The Criminal Investigations Department told the court that the suspect was arrested during the investigations on the torching of President Ranil Wickremesinghe's private residence and looting. The magistrate ordered for the suspect to be remanded and to be produced in an identification parade on the 7th of September. Another suspect was arrested in Court Tower on Monday night on charges of setting fire to President Ranil Wickremesinghe's private house, damaging property and committing theft. The police media division stated that the 33-year-old suspect is a carpenter from Aranayaka. Fort Magistrate Thilinagamage ordered that the 3 suspects arrested for assaulting and injuring Senior DIG Deshabandhu Tennakone and 2 other police officers on the 10th of May in Kolpiti be remanded until the 13th of September. The arrested suspects were charged for being members of an unlawful assembly and obstructing duties. Prasanjeeva Pattiarachi, a lawyer from Horana, was arrested by Sri Lanka police today for attacking the residence of MP Vidura Wickramanayake on the 9th of May 2022. The counsel was arrested when he visited the Horana police after he was informed to do so on Monday. The lawyer, who was presented to the Horana magistrates, was released on a personal bail of 500,000 rupees.
It is clear from this process of arrest that the government is trying to suppress those people who took the leadership of the struggle and were actively involved in the struggle. It is being carried out with the sole intent of suppressing the protests. Making arrests based on false complaints is unjust.
Reverend Sister Mary Sonali, who is alleged to have caused damage to the residence of Trevin Fernando, the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna organizer for Wennappuwa on the 9th of May 2022, was produced in court on Tuesday. The Maravilla Magistrates Court ordered for the Reverend Sister to be released on a personal bail of 100,000 rupees.
After listening carefully to the facts presented by the Wennappuwa police station, she was granted bail. The court magistrate inquired about the fact that a specific summary of evidence related to her would be presented, however the police failed to do so. Wennappuwa police did not compile any evidence in this regard.
The case will be taken up again on the 9th of December.
The People's Assembly that was formed following the Goldface protest visited the Human Rights Commission today.
The People's Assembly handed over a letter to the Human Rights Commission of Sri Lanka requesting that the law be implemented immediately against those who attacked the Gotagogama protest site at Goldface on the 9th of May 2022. The People's Assembly requested an immediate stop to the use of the Prevention of Terrorism Act to suppress dissent and for international intervention over the repeated violation of human rights in the country.
The people engaged in a struggle for their right to live. However, the protesters are branded as terrorists and they are arrested under the PTA. None of those who are arrested are terrorists. Why are they not acting against the terrorists that deployed thugs to Goldface on the 9th of May? The suppression of dissent and the violation on human rights must stop. We need international intervention.
There is no point in presenting a budget in the absence of coexistence and harmony. The President is well aware of this. He disregards the event on the 9th of May and pursues the events that happened on the 9th of the month that followed. Sri Lanka police is seeking public support to identify the groups. They don't need the support. They know who the people are. At the
international level, this act brings disgrace. The citizens who support this country are not terrorists.
The government means one thing and the state means another. Therefore, terrorism is an act against the state. But the people have the ability to protest against the government and express their displeasure against the government. It is a Supreme Court judgment in the Jayagosha case judgment that the people are very clear in protesting against the government. The right has been accepted. Don't try to legally suppress the people's rights by putting those laws. We say very clearly that it is an illegal situation. That is why we say suppression cannot stop the Aragalaya.
The henchmen of the ministers and MPs who attacked the Aragalaya are roaming free. I did not see any request to identify them. The law needs to be equal to all. Indictments were filed against former Minister Johnston Fernando and two others in the case for causing losses to the state by deploying Satosa workers for political activities in 2012. Indictments were filed against former Minister Johnston Fernando, former Satosa chairman Raj Fernando and former Satosa director Raj Mohideen Mohammad Zakir. Colombo High Court Judge Aditya Patabandige ordered for each suspect to be released on 2 personal bails, each amounting to 5 million rupees. The case is scheduled to be taken up again on the 21st of October.
The Criminal Investigations Department recorded statements from Attorney-at-Law Achala Senaviratne on Tuesday in relation to a complaint made last July about MP Sanath Nishantha.
On the 29th of July 2022, I submitted a complaint to the police headquarters regarding Sanath Nishantha influencing the court via the ICCPR Act, Witness and Victim Protection Act. This country has only one law. I think that the law of this country should be the same for the members of parliament or the rulers of the country. That's why we ask the law enforcement divisions to implement the laws of this country with
The non-partisan People's Union for Justice also engaged in a silent protest opposite the Criminal Investigations Department in support of Attorney-at-Law Achala Senaviratne.
News First with the people.
Another petition was filed against SLPP MP Sanath Nishanta today.
Another Sri Lankan lawyer filed an application with the Court of Appeal seeking a punishment against Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna parliamentarian Sanath Nishanta for contempt of court. The petition was filed by Attorney-at-Law IG Vijitha Kumara on Tuesday. The petition states that Sanath Nishanta was named as a suspect by the Attorney General in the incident surrounding the attack on the Gotagogama protest site at Golface on the 9th of May 2022, and thereafter he was arrested by the CID, remanded by the 4th Magistrate Court and then released on bail. It added that the respondent Sanath Nishanta, who is out on bail, speaking to reporters at the SLPP office on the 23rd of August 2022, made comments that are in contempt of court. The petition notes that the comments made by the MP brought disrepute to the courts and challenged the rule of law. It notes that the statements had been made to break the trust the people have placed with the judiciary.
Violent clashes between rival Iraqi forces have left 23 people dead after protesters stormed a government palace and staged an impromptu pool party 2 months after the unprecedented Sri Lankan political turmoil, wherein thousands of protesters stormed the presidential palace in Colombo.
Following the announcement by Iraqi's influential cleric Muqtada al-Sadr to quit politics, his supporters took to the streets in protest. Between the rival back groups and his loyalists ensued. In videos which are being widely circulated, protesters can be seen storming the presidential palace, akin to visuals Sri Lanka after President Gotabaya Rajapaksa's ouster from office and exit from the island nation. At a time when Iraq is witnessing a political deadlock, Sadr's supporters or his rival supporters were seen availing luxuries at the president's residence. Reporters suggest that shots were fired by guns and weapons while Sadr supporters and Tehran-backed units hurled stones at each other. The incident took place in Baghdad's Green Zone, an area where ministries and embassies are situated. The Iraqi military imposed curfew and urged protesters to vacate the zone.
Japanese Finance Minister Shinichi Suzuki said it was important for all creditor nations of Sri Lanka to gather to discuss Colombo's debt issue, adding that Tokyo would coordinate with other creditors on the matter.
Sri Lanka's President Ranil Wickremesinghe told Reuters this month that Sri Lanka would ask Japan to invite the main creditor nations to talks on restructuring bilateral debts. Earlier on Tuesday, Japan's foreign minister said his country was not in talks with Sri Lanka to hold such a meeting. He also said a regular news conference, quote, "We are having various interactions with the Sri Lankan side, but no preparation is going on with Sri Lanka for holding such talks," unquote.
The visiting IMF delegation met with Sri Lanka's opposition leader today.
An IMF delegation called on the leader of the opposition at his office in Colombo on Tuesday morning and held a discussion on how to solve the financial crisis Sri Lanka is facing at present. The Samagi Jana Balawegaya tweeted that the delegation consisting of Senior Mission Chief Peter Brewer, Deputy Chief Masahiro Nosaki and the permanent representative called on the leader of the opposition to discuss solving the current Sri Lankan financial crisis. Dr. Harsha De Silva, Kabir Hashim, Heran Bikamaratna and Rauf Hakim were the other parliamentarians who were present at the meeting. They said that discussions have been held and no final decision has yet been made for debt restructuring, and that the IMF program will be implemented only after the debt restructuring program is completed. We stated that it is appropriate to carry out a reform program that is unique to Sri Lanka and not something that is in line with International Monetary Fund. We have to work as much as Sri Lanka can withstand. So we clarified that matter. We stand for what is right as a responsible opposition at this time. If those reforms are done properly, we will support them. Otherwise, we also criticize that as an opposition, we will have to stand against those who do not suit us.
The Executive Board of the International Monetary Fund revived Pakistan's bailout program after a hiatus of 6 months, approving the $1.1 billion tranche and ending uncertainty.
The IMF agreed to extend the program by a year and increase the total funding by $720 million special drawing rights, or about $940 million as per the current exchange. The funds will be a lifeline to the South Asian countries suffering from devastating floods, which have inflicted damage of at least $10 billion, according to the country's planning minister. In a statement, IMF Deputy Managing Director said adhering to scheduled increases in fuel levies and energy tariffs is essential, as Pakistan's economy has been buffeted by adverse external conditions. These include spillovers from the war in Ukraine and domestic challenges, including the accommodative policies that resulted in an uneven and unbalanced growth. The floods were not mentioned in the fund statement. Pakistan's foreign exchange reserve have fallen to levels that cover only a month of exports, and its economy is wrangled with a massive current account deficit and high inflation.
What is Maithripala Sirisena's take on an all-party government? Let's have a look. It's been a few months since Ranil Wickremesinghe was appointed. During this period, he held multiple talks with political parties on the all-party government. I attended one such meeting yesterday. The status of that meeting and the one before remains the same. What was discussed yesterday was the proposal of a national council as a base for the all-party government. Some parties opine that there needs to be some form of legality for it. Unfortunately, a majority is commanded by the Portour. They were of the view that this should not be produced to Parliament to give it legality. They said it will reduce the powers of the cabinet. They claim the inclusion of a council in between the president and the cabinet will cause confusion. I am sad to say that there appears to be no intention on creating an all-party government without thinking about their personal powers and benefits.
හැදීම සම්බන්ධයෙන් පාර්ලිමේන්තුව තුල එකඟත්වයක් පෙනෙන්නේ නැහැ කියන එක තමයි මට කියන්නට තියෙන්නේ.
කුමක්ද කළ යුත්තේ?
තාම පැහැදිලි සර්වපාක්ෂික ආණ්ඩුවක්.
It's very clear, if they don't want an all-party government, the alternative is an election.
පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේ තියෙන මහා අවුල් සහගත තත්ත්වයක් එක්ක.
An international symposium organized by Asia Pacific Alliance Sri Lanka was held in Colombo.
The international symposium organized by Asia Pacific Alliance Sri Lanka, titled Crisis in Crisis, Unlocking the Power of Alliance Towards Innovative Recovery, was held in Colombo. Several dignitaries, including the country director of APAD Sri Lanka, Firzan Hashim, Director General of Disaster Management Centre, retired Major General Sudhantha Ranasinghe, Senior Advisor to APAD MO, and Peace Winds Japan, Nobutaka Miyahara, were present at the event.
Today, Sri Lanka is experiencing an economic crisis, and one of the root causes for this vulnerability is primarily and secondary impacts of disasters and inability to recover the impact following Build Back Better norms. Hence, communities should function as a multifaceted, interconnected systems, enabling partnerships, common platforms to work for all in the society with respect to their mandate, roles, and everybody's responsibility.
The Japanese ambassador to Sri Lanka was the chief guest of the event.
We would also like to consider ways to encourage Japanese investment in Sri Lanka and the promotion of tourism in Sri Lanka. It is our responsibility to share and utilize the lessons learned from these disasters and Japan's knowledge and technologies for disaster prevention in countries around the world. And the government of Japan is strongly promoting international contributions in the field of disaster prevention.
Certificates for the SAR Rope Rescue Level 1 technical training were presented to the group of search and rescue operators who completed the program. A panel discussion titled Revive and Reset, Resilient Recovery as a Counterbalance to a Multidimensional Crisis was held after the awarding of certificates.
So we are experiencing like back-to-back crises, and the nature, if you are not resilient, when one thing goes wrong, everything else goes wrong. And that's what we see, because we haven't changed the system, our markets are not working. So when there's one bomb attack, your tourism and your everything collapses. When there's COVID, everything collapses. And now we have defaulted on our debt and it has escalated to a political crisis.
Another panel discussion titled Regaining Reserves, a regional perspective on robust economic action also took place.
When we talk about these MSMEs, when we talk about the formal corporates, and the newspapers will focus on how the share market is doing. The entire share market of 300 companies the share market is not a reflection of how the economy is doing in this country. So I think the first priority is that the government policy makers have to recognize this distortion and set the record straight by examining and understanding these sectoral contributions to the country's economy.
The government of Sri Lanka and the UNDP in Sri Lanka announced the launch of the Sri Lanka SDG Investor Map. The SDG Investor Map is a market intelligence tool that seeks to direct private capital where Sri Lanka's private sustainable development goal priorities, government policies and market opportunity intersect as the country seeks to rebuild its economy sustainably using the SDG framework as its guide. The methodology for the map was created by the UNDP SDG Impact.
The SDGs were designed to ensure all people can live prosperous and fulfilling lives and to ensure that no one is left behind. A massive whole of society effort is now needed to bring them back on course and to ensure Sri Lankans' long-term sustainable development. That effort must involve all of us, the government, the development partner and the civil society, and in particular about the role of the private sector in helping us navigate our way out of the crisis. Economic recovery and financing of the SDG requires resources from across the spectrum, from the IMF program Sri Lanka is pursuing, to foreign direct investment, to blended finance options, to private and public partnership. Private capital is a key part of that mix.
The Vinayaka Chaturthi fast is to be observed tomorrow. This festival is to take place with the public participation for the first time since the COVID-19 pandemic.
Ganesha Chaturthi is celebrated by Hindus all over the world as the birthday of Lord Ganesha. On this auspicious day, Lord Ganesh is worshipped as the god of wisdom, prosperity and good fortune. Ganesha Chaturthi Day has been declared as a national holiday in India, and people across India participate in the Ganesha Chaturthi festival regardless of caste and religion. On this occasion, people install clay idols of Lord Ganesha in their home and pray for 10 days for prosperity, good fortune and wisdom. Lord Ganesha is known as the god of good fortune who provides prosperity, fortune, success and destroys evil. Due to all these qualities, he is also known as the Vignartha, and the day of Ganesh Chaturthi is called Vinayaka Chaviti or Vinayaka Chaturthi. The festivals of Ganesh Chaturthi begins with welcoming Lord Ganesha into homes and end by ultimately bidding him goodbye by submerging the idol in the water on the 10th day. In the Tiruchendran Murugal temple in Batiklo, a statue of Ganesha has been made from clay and the paintings have been completed.
Around 500 families in Sella Kataragama have been battered by poverty for decades, and one of the main issues they face was the lack of access to clean drinking water. Government thus stepped forward to provide them with a water purification system in a bid to quench their thirst.
The people of Kohomadigana in remote Sella Kataragama always looked for the blessings of the gods as they had nowhere else to turn to. In addition to farming, the only source of income for these people was the donations made by the pilgrims who visit the Kataragama sacred grounds. The 3-kilometer journey for water by these people is not an easy one, as the road leading to the only source of water is patrolled by wild elephants. Therefore, the people were compelled to consume water with high salinity, leading to chronic kidney disease. After government that took this issue to the people of Sri Lanka, Mrs. Kumuduni Dizoisa Abewardana stepped forward to provide them with the water purification system in memory of the late Mr. and Mrs. Felix R. Dizoisa. From tomorrow, this family will enjoy the benefits of clean drinking water.
The third phase of the Divisavya program, supported by LOLC Holdings, continues in a bid to help those worst affected by the economic crisis in Sri Lanka. On the 25th day of the third phase, essential food packets are being distributed to the poverty-stricken families in the Anuradhapura district.
Today's program began at the Nochiyagama Divisional Secretariat office in Anuradhapura. Essential food packages are being distributed in 3 locations in the Nochiyagama Divisional Secretariat today under the Divisavya program. The Divisavya program identifies families that are facing serious issues economically and provides them with much needed relief packages.
And with that, we wrap up primetime news here on TV1. For more news, log on to our award-winning website, that is www.newsfirst.lk. For the Newsfirst team, I'm David Paldano. Take care.